A lost little girl walked out of the rain and ignored the Marine holding the leash. Caleb Rose saw her first as a small yellow shape between the trees, standing at the edge of Willow Creek Park where the playground lights flickered against the wet grass. She could not have been more than 6 years old. Her raincoat was too bright for the gray evening. Her shoes were muddy, and strands of brown hair clung to her cheeks as if the wind had been trying to pull her apart. Caleb stopped so suddenly that Atlas stopped with him. The German shepherd did not bark. He did not pull forward. He only lowered his head a little, ears high, amber eyes fixed on the child with a calm so deep it felt almost human. "Hey, sweetheart," Caleb said softly, keeping his voice low and his body still. "Are you lost?" The little girl did not answer. She did not look at his face. She looked at the leash in his hand, then at Atlas, then back toward the dark trail behind her. The swings moved slowly in the wind with no children on them, chains creaking like small bells. Rain tapped against the metal slide. Somewhere beyond the park fence, traffic moved along the county road, distant and useless. Caleb was a white United States Marine in his 30s, built by years of discipline and quiet endurance, but nothing in his training had ever taught him how to approach a terrified child without making the fear worse. So he crouched slowly, leaving several feet between them, one hand open, palm down. "You are safe," he said. The word seemed to reach Atlas before it reached her. The dog eased himself down onto the wet path, careful and slow, folding his strong body into the grass as if he understood he needed to become smaller, softer, less like a guard, and more like shelter. The girl's chin trembled. She took one step, then another. Caleb held his breath. She passed the leash completely. She passed Caleb's open hand. Then she knelt in front of Atlas and placed her tiny fingers around his front paw. Not his collar, not the leash, his paw. She gripped it with both hands like a person holding onto the last solid thing in a storm. Atlas did not move. Rain gathered along his sable black and tan fur and slid down the bridge of his nose. He simply rested his head near her shoulder and let her hold him. Caleb felt something tighten in his chest, the kind of ache that comes when the world becomes too quiet too fast. "What is your name?" he asked gently. The girl pressed her forehead closer to Atlas's paw and whispered one word, so faint Caleb almost missed it. "Stay." That was when Caleb noticed the small shoe print trail behind her, leading out from the north woods beyond the creek, and the single yellow ribbon tied to a low branch as if someone had marked a path in panic. Atlas saw it too. His ears shifted toward the trees, but he kept his paw still beneath the little girl's hands. Caleb looked from the child to the darkening trail, then back to the dog who had somehow become the only language she trusted. The rain thickened. The park emptied into silence. And Caleb understood this was not just a lost child. This was a message being delivered by trembling hands, muddy shoes, and a German shepherd gentle enough to let fear hold on until courage could return. Caleb stayed crouched on the wet path, careful not to crowd her, careful not to let urgency harden his voice. The little girl's hands remained locked around Atlas's paw, small fingers pressed into the damp fur, as if she had found a handle on the world. Atlas lay perfectly still, breathing slow, his great chest rising and falling with a rhythm gentle enough for a frightened child to borrow. Rain made tiny silver lines across the park lights. The empty swings moved behind them, whispering on their chains. Caleb glanced toward the north trail again, where mud darkened the gravel and the yellow ribbon trembled on the branch. Something had brought her from there. Something had made her run, or wander, or search. He did not know which, and guessing wrong could frighten her deeper into silence. "Okay," he said softly. "We do not have to move yet." The girl's eyes flicked toward him for the first time, quick as a bird. They were gray-blue, wide, rimmed with exhaustion, but not empty. She understood. She was listening. Caleb lowered his hand and let it rest on his own knee. No reaching, no sudden comfort. He had learned long ago that safety was not something a person could demand another soul to feel. Safety had to be offered and then left there, like a light on a porch. "My name is Caleb," he said. "This is Atlas. He is very good at staying." At the sound of his name, Atlas gave the smallest movement of his tail, a quiet sweep against the wet grass. The girl looked down at the paw she was holding. Her mouth moved, but no sound came. Caleb waited. A car passed beyond the park fence, tires hissing over rain. Somewhere in the distance, thunder folded itself behind the hills. The girl tightened her grip. Caleb noticed then that her sleeves were soaked through, and one cuff had slipped back enough to show a plastic hospital bracelet around her wrist. He did not lean in too quickly. He only tilted his head until he could read part of it in the light. Lily Harper. Beneath the name, in smaller print, were words that made his chest go still. Selective mutism under stress. Caleb understood at once. She was not refusing to talk. Her fear had taken the bridge between her thoughts and her voice. He softened his expression and nodded as if she had just explained everything perfectly. Lily, he said, quiet enough that her name would not feel like an alarm. You do not have to talk. Her eyes lifted again. Caleb swallowed the ache in his throat. Atlas will listen for you. The German shepherd seemed to understand the promise before it finished leaving Caleb's mouth. He shifted only enough to rest his other paw near her knees, offering more warmth, more ground. Lily's lower lip trembled. She did not smile. Not yet. But she stopped shaking quite so hard. Caleb slipped off his olive jacket and laid it on the ground beside her, not over her shoulders, not without permission, just near enough for her to choose it. After a moment, Lily reached with one hand, pulled the jacket closer, and draped the edge across her lap, while keeping her other hand wrapped around Atlas's paw. That tiny choice told Caleb more than words could have. Trust had not arrived, but it had taken one step through the rain. He reached slowly for his phone and angled the screen away from her so the brightness would not startle her. No signal. One weak bar appeared, disappeared, then vanished completely. The storm was sitting low over Willow Creek, cutting the park off from the simple comfort of a call. Caleb looked toward the parking lot, then toward the trail. Lily, he said, is someone with you? Her face changed. Not much. Just a tightening around the eyes, a quick breath caught behind her teeth. Atlas lifted his head. Lily turned toward the north woods and tugged the paw in her hands. Not hard, just once. A small pull. A direction. Caleb felt the meaning before he could name it. She was not asking to be taken away. She was asking them to follow. Caleb did not move right away. The pull of Lily's small hand on Atlas's paw was not strong enough to guide a grown man, but it carried the weight of a command spoken by someone who could not speak at all. Atlas rose first, slowly, with the careful patience of a dog who understood that one sudden motion could break the thin thread of trust between them. Lily shifted with him, keeping both hands near his front leg until he settled into a gentle standing posture. She did not take the leash. When Caleb lifted it slightly, only to keep it from dragging in the mud, Lily's shoulders tightened and her eyes dropped. Caleb lowered it again immediately. No leash for you, he said softly. Just Atlas. We will do it your way. The words seemed to loosen something in her. Not enough for speech, but enough for one small nod. Caleb wrapped the leash loosely around his own hand, giving Atlas room to move without making Lily feel pulled. Then the three of them turned toward the north trail, leaving the empty playground behind. The path narrowed quickly beneath fir trees and wet alder branches. Rain tapped against leaves overhead and slipped down in cold drops that landed on Caleb's neck. The park lights faded behind them, replaced by the pale glow of Caleb's phone flashlight held low near the ground. He kept it pointed at the path, not at Lily's face. Mud marked her shoes, and now Caleb saw the color clearly, a deep red-brown clay that did not belong near the playground. It came from the creek trail, the old section most families avoided after heavy rain because it dipped low and held water. Atlas lowered his nose and moved at Lily's pace, not his own. Every few yards he paused, not because he was lost, but because he was waiting for her little steps to catch up. Caleb watched him with quiet amazement. In all the months since he had adopted Atlas, he had seen the German shepherd alert, protect, obey, and comfort. But this was different. This was translation. Lily would tug the paw. Atlas would turn. Caleb would follow. A silent language passed from child to dog to marine beneath the sound of rain. They reached the small wooden footbridge over Willow Creek. Water rushed below, swollen by the storm, but still contained within its banks, brown and silver under the darkening sky. Lily stopped before the bridge. Her breath came faster. Caleb stayed a few feet back. We can take it slow, he said. Atlas stepped onto the first plank and then lay down halfway, placing his front paw out where Lily could reach it without stepping fully onto the bridge. It was such a strange, beautiful thing that Caleb almost forgot to breathe. Lily stared at him, then at the creek, then at Atlas's waiting paw. One step, then another. Her fingers found his fur again. Together they crossed. On the far side, the trail bent toward a line of old picnic shelters and a closed campground used only in summer. Caleb noticed something caught on a blackberry bush beside the path, a strip of yellow fabric, torn from Lily's raincoat. It fluttered gently in the wind. Lily saw it too and made a sound in her throat, small and strained. Atlas stopped and looked up at Caleb. His eyes were steady, but his ears had shifted forward. There was more ahead. Caleb felt it in the dog's stillness. He also felt an old memory rise before he could stop it, a memory of searching too late for someone too small in a place too loud, a memory he never spoke of because some failures do not become lighter when named. He pushed it down, not away, just low enough to keep moving. This was not then. This was here. This child was alive, cold, frightened, and still trying to lead them somewhere. "Lily," Caleb said, his voice barely above the rain. "Are we looking for your mom?" Lily's eyes filled at the word. She gave one quick nod, then pulled Atlas's paw toward the dark bend in the trail. Far ahead, almost hidden beneath the creek noise and the soft rush of rain, Caleb heard it. A woman's voice, thin with exhaustion, calling one name again and again. "Lily." Atlas stood taller. Caleb tightened his grip on the leash and whispered, "Show me, boy." The German shepherd moved forward, slow enough for Lily to hold on, sure enough for Caleb to believe. The voice ahead was not loud enough to be certain, but Lily heard it the way a child hears home through a closed door. Her whole body changed. She leaned forward, one hand still curled near Atlas's paw, the other gripping the edge of Caleb's olive jacket around her shoulders. Atlas moved with a new focus, nose low, paws careful on the slick trail, his sable fur darkened by rain. Caleb followed close, but not too close, keeping his phone light pointed at the ground, watching for roots, stones, and shallow pools that could trip a tired little girl. "Easy," he murmured. "One step at a time." The trail curved past the old picnic shelters, where wooden tables sat empty beneath dripping roofs and pine needles lay thick like a brown carpet. Beyond them, Willow Creek widened near a low meadow that flooded whenever the rain came hard from the coast. Caleb saw the stroller first. It was tipped slightly against a patch of tall grass, one wool caught in mud, a pink blanket hanging over the side, soaked but empty. Lily made a small sound and tightened both hands on Atlas. Caleb's chest tightened too, but he kept his voice steady. "I see it. We are going to keep going." Atlas did not pull toward the stroller. He sniffed once, then turned sharply toward a stand of alder trees near the creek bank. That was where the voice came again, thin, shaking, full of a mother's fear. "Lily, baby, please." Lily's breath broke. She tried to rush forward, but Atlas stepped sideways, gently blocking her path with his shoulder, not stopping her from love, only slowing her from danger. Caleb saw why a second later. The ground ahead dipped into slick mud where rainwater had washed over the trail. Not deep, not dramatic, but enough to make footing uncertain in the dark. "Good boy," Caleb whispered. He crouched beside Lily, leaving space between them. "Your mom is close. We are going to reach her safely." Lily looked at him then, and for the first time, Caleb saw the full storm inside her eyes. Fear, hope, exhaustion, and a trust so fragile it had to be carried carefully. She nodded once. Atlas guided them along the edge of the muddy dip, choosing firmer ground beneath the trees. Caleb followed each placement of the dog's paws like a map. At last, the beam of his phone found a woman sitting beside a fallen log, wrapped in a dark raincoat, one hand braced on the ground, the other pressed to her chest as she looked up with disbelief. Her face was pale from cold and worry, but when she saw Lily, everything in her broke open into relief. "Lily." The little girl froze. For one heartbeat, she did not let go of Atlas. She looked down at the German shepherd, as if asking whether the world was safe enough to return to. Atlas lowered his head and nudged her hand with his nose. "Permission." Lily released his paw and ran the last few steps into her mother's arms. Emily Harper folded around her daughter with a sound that was half sob, half prayer, holding her as gently as if the child were made of glass and light. Caleb turned his gaze away for a moment, giving them the privacy of reunion beneath the rain. Atlas sat beside him, calm and watchful, water dripping from his ears. "Ma'am." Caleb said softly after a few seconds. My name is Caleb Rowe. I found Lily near the playground. Are you hurt? Emily looked up, tears streaked with rain. I do not think so. I slipped earlier. My phone fell somewhere on the trail. She got scared by the thunder and ran. She stops talking when she is frightened, and I could not find her. Her voice trembled on the last words. Caleb nodded. We have you now. He finally caught a signal, weak but enough, and called for help, giving the park entrance, the north trail, the old campground, every landmark with calm precision. Lily stayed tucked against her mother, but one small hand reached backward until it found Atlas's fur. She did not need to hold his paw anymore. Just touch him. Caleb watched that tiny hand rest against the dog's shoulder, and something inside him softened in a place he had kept guarded for years. This rescue had no enemy to face, no noise, no orders shouted into chaos. Only rain, patience, a frightened child, and a dog who understood that sometimes the bravest thing in the world is to stay still until someone can let go. The first responders reached them 12 minutes later, their flashlights moving through the trees like careful stars. No one rushed toward Lily. Caleb made sure of that before they came close. He met them halfway on the trail, rain running from his hairline into the collar of his shirt, and spoke in a low, clear voice. The child is safe, but frightened. She may not answer questions. Her mother is cold and exhausted. Keep voices soft. The lead paramedic nodded at once, and Caleb felt a quiet gratitude for professionals who knew that rescue was not only about arriving, but about arriving gently. Atlas remained beside Lily and Emily near the fallen log, sitting tall but calm, his body angled between the little girl and the open trail like a living wall of reassurance. Lily watched every new face from behind her mother's sleeve. When one responder knelt too quickly, her hand darted to Atlas's shoulder. Atlas did not flinch. He leaned just enough for her fingers to sink into his damp fur, and the girl's breathing slowed again. Emily kept whispering into her daughter's hair, soft, ordinary words that sounded holy in the rain. I am here. I have got you. I am right here. Caleb stood a few feet away and looked toward the creek, where brown water hurried over stones under the wooden bridge. The scene was simple now. A mother wrapped in a thermal blanket, a child wearing Caleb's oversized olive jacket, a German shepherd accepting the weight of a small hand as if it were the most important duty he had ever been given. Yet simplicity did not make it small. Caleb had learned that years ago and forgotten it anyway. Sometimes the quiet moments were the ones that found the deepest wounds. An old memory rose again, sharper this time, not with noise or danger, but with the ache of being unable to reach someone in time. He had never told anyone how long that memory stayed with him after leaving the service, how it returned on nights when the house was too still and the world seemed full of doors he had failed to open. But Lily was here. Emily was here. Atlas was here. Tonight had not ended in absence. A deputy arrived with a park ranger, both speaking softly as they checked the trail and marked the slippery section near the meadow. Emily answered what she could, explaining that she and Lily had taken the creek loop before sunset. That thunder startled Lily. That one panicked minute had become an hour of searching, then more. Caleb listened without judgment. He heard the guilt in Emily's voice and knew it did not need to be fed. She found help, Caleb said gently. Emily looked up. She found him, she whispered, her eyes shifting to Atlas. Lily, still quiet, nodded once against her mother's coat. The paramedics helped Emily stand, slow and steady. Lily would not climb onto the small utility cart until Atlas stepped beside it first. Caleb gave the dog a quiet command, and Atlas placed his front paws near the cart's edge, sniffed it, then sat as if declaring it acceptable. Only then did Lily allow her mother to lift her in. Caleb walked beside them all the way back through the woods. His phone light was no longer needed. The responders had lanterns now, warm beams spilling across rain-bright leaves and muddy footprints. At the bridge, Lily reached down from the cart, searching. Atlas moved close enough for her hand to find his ear. She crossed without a sound. By the time they reached the playground, the storm had softened to a mist. The swings barely moved. The yellow ribbon still fluttered on the branch, but it no longer looked like panic. It looked like proof that someone had tried to leave a path back. Emily paused before getting into the ambulance and turned to Caleb. I do not know how to thank you. Caleb looked at Atlas, then at Lily's small hand resting on the dog's head. Thank him, he said. Lily looked at Caleb for a long moment. Then, in a voice no louder than rain sliding from a leaf, she whispered, he stayed. Caleb felt the words settle somewhere deep inside him. Atlas only blinked, calm and loyal, as if staying had never been a choice, but the whole purpose of being found. The ambulance doors closed softly, and Caleb stood beneath the park lights until the red glow disappeared beyond the trees. For a long moment, he did not move. Mist drifted across Willow Creek Park, silver under the lamps, and the wet playground sat empty again as if nothing extraordinary had happened there. Atlas stood beside him, rain beating on his sable coat, ears relaxed now, breathing steady. Caleb looked down at the German shepherd and saw no pride in him, no restless need to be praised, only that quiet readiness he always carried, the kind that made service look like peace. You did good, boy, Caleb said. Atlas leaned his shoulder against Caleb's leg, just enough pressure to be felt, not enough to ask for anything. They walked home slowly through the neighborhood streets, past dark windows, dripping gutters, and parked cars shining under the streetlights. Caleb's olive jacket was gone with Lily, wrapped around her small shoulders, and the cold worked through his shirt, but he barely noticed. His mind kept returning to the feel of that child's silence, how it had not been emptiness at all. It had been full of meaning, full of fear, full of direction. She had been speaking the only way she could, and Atlas had listened first. At home, Caleb unlocked the front door and let Atlas in ahead of him. The little house smelled of coffee, old wood, and the faint cedar soap he used to clean the floors. Usually, after evening walks, Caleb moved through his routine without thought. Bowl filled, boots by the door, lights off one by one, sleep if it came, waiting if it did not. But tonight he stopped in the kitchen and rested both hands on the counter. The quiet felt different. Not heavier, not empty, just honest. Atlas drank from his bowl, then patted back and sat beside him, looking up with those amber eyes that never demanded confession but somehow invited it. Caleb exhaled slowly. I keep thinking I should have known what she needed sooner, he said. His voice sounded strange in the room. Atlas tilted his head. Caleb gave a faint, tired smile. Yeah, I know. You did. He pulled a towel from the drawer and dried the dog's fur with slow strokes, working around the ears, across the shoulders, down the strong front legs that Lily had trusted more than any words. When he reached the paw she had held, Caleb paused. There was a small smear of red-brown clay between the toes, the same mud from the creek trail. Caleb cleaned it gently. A memory rose again, but this time it did not knock the breath from him. It came softer, like a door opening to a room long avoided. Years ago, he had learned that not every rescue ended with everyone safe. He had carried that truth like a stone in his chest, mistaking grief for punishment. But tonight, in a city park under rain, a little girl had placed her trust in a dog's paw, and Caleb had followed instead of forcing, listened instead of commanding, waited instead of rushing. Maybe that counted. Maybe healing did not always arrive as forgiveness spoken aloud. Maybe sometimes it arrived as a child whispering, he stayed, and a dog looking at you as if staying was still possible. Caleb finished drying Atlas and sat on the kitchen floor beside him. The German shepherd lowered his head into Caleb's lap with a deep sigh. Outside, the last rain slipped from the roof in soft drops. Inside, for the first time in a long while, Caleb did not turn on the television to cover the silence. He let it be. He let it breathe. And when Atlas closed his eyes, Caleb rested one hand over the paw that had carried a child's courage through the dark. The next morning came pale and clean, with sunlight resting softly on the wet roofs of the neighborhood. Caleb woke before dawn, not because of a nightmare, but because Atlas was standing beside the bed with his leash in his mouth. The German shepherd's ears were relaxed, his eyes calm, but there was a quiet insistence in the way he held himself, as if the world had placed another small appointment on his heart. Caleb sat up, rubbed a hand over his face, and looked at the clock. 6:42. You are early, he murmured. Atlas wagged once. Not playful. Certain. Caleb dressed in a gray shirt and an old olive jacket, then stepped outside into air that smelled of pine, damp pavement, and the last traces of rain. Willow Creek Park looked different in daylight. The playground was empty, but no longer eerie. Sunlight shone on the slide. The swings moved gently in a breeze that had lost its threat. Near the North Trail, A park ranger had placed a small temporary sign asking visitors to use caution after heavy rain. Caleb paused by the branch where the yellow ribbon had been tied. It was gone now, likely taken as evidence or simply removed by the wind. Atlas lowered his nose to the ground, sniffed once, then sat. Caleb understood. This was where Lily had come through. This was where fear had asked for help. He stood there for a while, letting the morning settle around him. A jogger passed and nodded. A school bus hissed to a stop beyond the fence. Somewhere nearby, a mother laughed as a toddler complained about wet shoes. Ordinary sounds. Sacred sounds, if a man had nearly forgotten how to hear them. Caleb walked the trail again with Atlas, not searching this time, only remembering. At the bridge, Atlas stopped halfway and placed one paw on the damp plank, the same paw Lily had held. Caleb rested his hand on the railing. Water moved below, quieter now, no longer swollen with the storm. "She made it across because of you," he said. Atlas looked up as if Caleb had misunderstood. The dog's gaze seemed to say that Lily had crossed because someone let her take the time she needed. Caleb swallowed and looked away, smiling faintly at himself. "All right, because of both of you." By mid-morning, Caleb received a call from Emily Harper. Her voice was steadier now, though still tired at the edges. Lily was home, warm, and medically cleared. She had slept with Caleb's olive jacket folded beside her pillow. Emily asked if she could return it later that week. Caleb said there was no rush, but Emily grew quiet, and then said, "I think she wants to see him." Caleb looked down at Atlas, who was sitting by the kitchen door as if he had been listening to every word. "He would like that," Caleb answered. The visit happened that Sunday afternoon at a small community garden behind the church near the park, a place with raised flower beds, white benches, and wind chimes hanging from a cedar beam. Caleb chose it because it was open, quiet, and easy for Lily to leave if she felt overwhelmed. He arrived early with Atlas and sat on a bench beneath a leafless dogwood tree. When Emily's car pulled in, Lily stepped out holding the folded olive jacket in both arms. She wore a clean yellow sweater this time, rain boots with little stars on them, and her hair was brushed into two uneven braids. She saw Caleb and stopped. Then she saw Atlas. The German shepherd stood but did not move toward her. He waited. Lily crossed the grass slowly, clutching the jacket. When she reached him, she knelt and placed one small hand on his paw. Not because she was lost now, because she remembered where courage had lived when she needed it most. Emily stayed near the garden gate at first, giving Lily room to choose the distance for herself. Caleb noticed and respected it. He did not stand too quickly. He did not ask Lily how she felt. He simply sat on the white bench with his hands relaxed and his voice quiet, while Atlas lay down in the grass and let the little girl hold his paw as long as she needed. The community garden smelled of wet soil, cedar mulch, and late autumn flowers holding on to color before winter. Wind chimes moved softly above them, bright notes drifting through the open space like small pieces of glass catching sunlight. Lily ran her thumb over Atlas's fur, slow and careful. The German shepherd watched her with patient amber eyes, his sable coat glowing where the afternoon light touched it. After a long silence, Lily reached into the pocket of the olive jacket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. She looked at her mother first. Emily nodded. Then Lily handed it to Caleb without speaking. Caleb unfolded it gently. It was a crayon drawing, made with the serious focus only a child can give to something that matters. There was a tall man in a green jacket, a large dog with pointed ears, a little girl in yellow boots, and a bridge drawn in blue. But the brightest part of the picture was the dog's paw, colored gold until the paper had almost torn from pressure. Under the drawing, in Emily's careful handwriting, were Lily's words, "He let me hold brave." Caleb read the sentence once. Then again, the world around him seemed to soften at the edges. He had been thanked before in ways that sounded official, formal, polished by ceremony. This was different. This was 6 words from a child who had known fear and found language by touching kindness. Caleb looked at Lily, but she was watching Atlas, not him. Her small hand still rested on the dog's paw. "That is the best drawing I have ever seen," Caleb said, and his voice came out rougher than he meant it to. Lily's mouth curved slightly. Not quite a smile. A beginning. Emily stepped closer, her eyes wet but peaceful. "She asked me to write the words exactly like that," she said. "She said his paw was brave." Caleb looked down at Atlas. The dog gave a slow blink. unconcerned with praise, as if courage was simply something to lend when someone smaller came looking for it. Lily reached into her other pocket and pulled out a small yellow ribbon, clean now, tied into a bow. She placed it gently around Atlas's collar, not fastening it tightly, just letting it rest there beneath his tag. "For finding," she whispered. The words were faint, but they were whole. Emily covered her mouth with one hand. Caleb lowered his head, giving the moment room to breathe. Atlas lifted his nose and touched Lily's sleeve. That was all. No grand motion. No performance. Just a dog accepting a thank you in the only language he had ever needed. Later, they walked together through the garden paths. Lily stayed between Emily and Atlas, not holding the paw this time, only letting her fingers brush the dog's shoulder now and then. Caleb walked a step behind, carrying the drawing as carefully as if it were a folded flag. The sun lowered behind the church roof, turning the windows warm. Bells rang once in the distance. For the first time in years, Caleb felt the day ending without dread. He had not erased the past. He had not solved every ache. But a child had trusted him enough to return his jacket. A mother had trusted him enough to share silence. And Atlas had shown him that rescue did not always mean carrying someone out. Sometimes it meant becoming still enough for them to find their own way back. A week later, Caleb taped Lily's drawing to the refrigerator with the same care he once gave to maps and mission notes. The paper curled slightly at the corners, bright with crayon color against the plain white door. A tall man in green. A little girl in yellow. A German shepherd with a golden paw. He stood there for a long time before breakfast, coffee cooling in his hand, while Atlas rested on the kitchen floor beneath the drawing, as if he had chosen that post himself. Outside, Oregon morning light moved softly through the window. The neighborhood was waking in small sounds. A trash truck turning the corner, a bicycle bell, a dog barking 2 houses down. Ordinary life. Caleb had spent years thinking ordinary meant fragile, something that could disappear if he trusted it too much. But now it felt different. It felt like a gift being offered in pieces small enough for him to accept. That afternoon, he and Atlas returned to Willow Creek Park. Not because something was wrong, because something had become right there. The grass had dried. The creek had settled. The bridge carried sunlight instead of fear. Caleb walked the trail slowly, letting Atlas choose the pace. And when they reached the middle of the wooden bridge, the dog stopped and placed one paw on the plank. Caleb smiled faintly. "I know," he said. "This is where she crossed." Atlas looked out over the water, amber eyes calm, yellow ribbon still tied loosely near his collar. The ribbon fluttered once in the breeze, bright as a small flag of courage. Caleb rested one hand on the railing and let the quiet come. This time, the past did not rise like a storm. It came like a tide pulling back, leaving the shore cleaner than before. He thought of Lily's hand gripping Atlas's paw, Emily's voice in the rain, the words on the drawing. "He let me hold brave." Caleb had believed courage was something loud, something carried in the chest with clenched teeth and straight shoulders. Atlas had taught him otherwise. Courage could lie down in wet grass. Courage could wait. Courage could become gentle enough for a frightened child to touch. On Sunday, Lily and Emily passed them after church near the garden gate. Lily did not hide behind her mother this time. She lifted one hand in a small wave, then looked at Atlas and whispered, "Hi, brave." Atlas wagged his tail once, solemn as ever, and Caleb laughed softly before he could stop himself. The sound surprised him. It did not hurt. That evening, back home, Caleb placed Atlas's bowl on the floor and sat beside him while he ate. No television, no restless pacing, just the warm scrape of the bowl, the fading gold of sunset, and the drawing on the refrigerator watching over them like a blessing. When Atlas finished, he came to Caleb and placed that same front paw on his knee. Caleb covered it with his hand. "Strong, warm, real. You let me hold it too? Did you know that?" he whispered. Atlas leaned into him, quiet and certain. Outside, the first stars appeared above Willow Creek. Inside, a wounded Marine and a faithful dog sat in the kind of peace that does not announce itself. It simply stays.